In the 1820s, the London Stock Exchange was consumed by a speculative frenzy. Investors aggressively bought sovereign debt from newly formed nations across the globe. Countries like Colombia and Chile had recently declared independence from Spain and needed capital to build their governments. To attract British money, they offered bond yields double or triple what stable domestic investments paid. The prospect of massive returns created a gold rush atmosphere in the City of London. Into this feverish market stepped Gregor MacGregor. He was a Scottish soldier of fortune who had genuinely fought alongside Simon Bolivar in the South American Wars of Independence. He arrived in London bearing the aura of a decorated military commander. MacGregor brought first-hand accounts of the New World's untapped wealth. Investors saw a man who combined aristocratic military prestige with direct experience in the exact emerging markets they were desperate to buy into. He arrived in London as His Serene Highness Gregor I, the self-appointed cazique or prince of the nation of Poyais. Looking at this map of the West Indies and Central America, MacGregor claimed that George Frederick Augustus, the king of the Mosquito Nation, had granted him 8 million acres of land right along this coastline, a region known as the Mosquito Shore. Armed with official-looking land grants and a confident bearing, MacGregor easily infiltrated London's elite. He secured credit lines, opened a diplomatic legation, and was even honored with an official banquet hosted by the Lord Mayor of London. Poyais did not exist. The 8 million acres he claimed dominion over was an entirely undeveloped stretch of coastal swamp and thick jungle, completely devoid of any roads, ports, or government. A transatlantic voyage took months, making independent verification nearly impossible for the average investor. MacGregor exploited a vast physical distance between the London money markets and the Central American coast to sell a fiction that could not easily be checked. MacGregor institutionalized his fiction through a bureaucratic reality. He opened formal land offices in London, Edinburgh, and Glasgow, employing agents to sell acreage and issue official land certificates. He went as far as commissioning the printing of physical currency. Thousands of Bank of Poyais dollars, featuring intricate scrollwork, were printed in Scotland. Settlers were encouraged to exchange their hard-earned British pounds for this worthless paper before sailing. He also published a 355-page promotional guidebook outlining the territory's fertile soil, pure water, and abundant gold reserves. The author was listed as Captain Thomas Strangeways, a pseudonym for MacGregor himself. This aged, formal text is an excerpt from that exact promotional campaign. In the 1820s, bound books and typeset pages carried inherent authority. Seeing the utopian promises written in a heavy, professional volume suppressed investor skepticism. By backing his claims with banknotes, government offices, and a hardbound book, MacGregor bypassed critical thinking. The sheer volume of manufactured paperwork made Poyais feel tangible. MacGregor specifically targeted his fellow Scots. He pitched Poyais as a second chance for Scottish colonial ambition, framing it as a way to redeem the nation after the historic financial disaster of the Darien scheme decades earlier. Wealthy individuals bought officer commissions in the fictional Poyaisian army. Tradesmen secured exclusive government contracts. One Edinburgh cobbler even paid for the title of official shoemaker to the Princess of Poyais. This historical record documents the emission of a new debt in May 1823. A contractor named William John Richardson, convinced of the colony's reality, helped revive the financing, selling off hundreds of bonds to a tight circle of London merchants. Flush with cash, MacGregor chartered ships. Over 200 eager colonists boarded the Honduras Packet and the Kennersley Castle. Many had sold their farms, drained their life savings, and packed their families for a one-way trip to a tropical paradise. Up until the ships weighed anchor, MacGregor's actions were a financial crime. Sending men, women, and children across the Atlantic toward an uninhabited swamp escalated the scheme into a lethal human tragedy. When the settlers finally anchored at the mouth of the Black River, they expected to be greeted by a bustling port city of 2,000 residents, complete with broad avenues and a parliamentary building. They found an untouched coastline of dense mangroves and malarial water. There was no capital, no infrastructure, and no sign of civilization. Stranded, the settlers unloaded their supplies, many of which were ruined by saltwater during the landing. The daytime sun baked the sand so intensely that it incubated turtle eggs, while the cold nights brought torrential rain and rampant tropical fever. Disease spread rapidly through the makeshift camp. Realizing they had been abandoned without adequate shelter or medicine, morale collapsed. The cobbler, who had expected to serve the princess, lost all hope and shot himself in the head. The investors in London had only lost their money. These colonists lost their lives, because MacGregor recognized that a sufficiently detailed utopian promise could override a person's instinct for self-preservation. This document recounts the aftermath. In April 1823, a schooner discovered the camp and initiated a desperate evacuation. The text details the final blow. The Mosquito King formally repudiated MacGregor's concession, confirming the settlers were there illegally, stripping away the last illusion of sovereignty. Looking at the data, the true cost of the illusion is staggering. Of the roughly 250 settlers who sailed for the promised land, at least 180 died. Fewer than 50 ever made it back to Britain. Before the survivors could even reach London to expose the truth, MacGregor quietly slipped across the English Channel. Setting up shop in Paris, he immediately began drafting a new constitution, preparing to sell the exact same fraudulent land to the French public. This is the Mosquito Coast today. It is a stark reminder of the space MacGregor operated in. He found a blank spot on the map, filled it with forged documents and false promises, and managed to convince hundreds of people that a deadly void was a paradise waiting to be claimed.